Yeah, yeah, yeah. So many lies that you hear from the net, they don't get her respect. She reporting the truth, not a check. You want an unbiased opinion straight from the chest, not a bit of accomplice or someone here for a check. Tune in, these are thoughts from a lawyer on a mission who goes so hard it's like she works on commission. Trolls in the comments might say she tripping cause they lack the knowledge, they don't know they missing. Got a couple current events that you like, wanna know about law from the eyes. Tired of all these blogs running lies because their agendas are disguised. Tune in to the intellect, cause I'm sure y'all missing all the facts of the case that she steady is gifting. Someone here for the people, man, it's so uplifting. If you ain't subscribed yet, then you just omitting facts.
Hello, everyone. It is Pam Esquire, also known as your Law Intellect. Happy Saturday. It is October 18th, 2025, and we are here to talk about Brian McKnight. This is going to be an interesting live. It's going to be very interesting because your girl has found the court documents. Because you know me, you can't just put a conclusory allegation out there and I don't go try to figure out where it came from. So, Brian McKnight sued his ex-wife for defamation and some other claims, and we're going to go over that complaint. And what made me start looking into this case? Let me pull his little Instagram up here. Okay, let's see. This is what he said. Hold on. It might make me have to log in. Let me put it on my phone. This is what made me even look this up because I just wanted to know who he won money against. So this is what he put out here. Hold on, guys. Make sure you guys hit the like button on your way in. Yes, we are starting off running on this here live because we got some things to go through. We got some clarity that we need to put out here on the internet. And that's all I can do is shake my head. That's it. But we're going to get into it and we're going to stick to what Mr. McKnight actually filed, what is going on in the court on the docket, and a few affidavits that were filed as well on his alleged losses because of his ex-wife. But this is the conversation that he had on his Instagram that began my search to find out what case he was even talking about, because we know he also sued Jaguar Wright. We're going to get into that a little later too. Okay, like towards the end, we're going to talk about Jag and what happened with that case. But here we go.
It's been a long journey getting to this day, October 16th, 2025. But we are here in the English countryside, about an hour and a half outside of London, and the verdict is in. We've been quiet, listening to liars continue to lie and keeping to ourselves, living and loving our life, as we said, leaving everything in God's hands and letting our lawyer do the talking. But according to the courts, trying to ruin my name and trying to bring harm to my family in a book filled with lies equals $8.8 million. And this is just the beginning, because anyone and everyone that helped promote these lies will hear from my lawyer in the days to come. No weapon formed against us shall prosper. Now, from my voicemail is the voice of a liar.
Do not text Miko again. Do not call Miko again. Leilani, if you are also checking these messages, that goes for you as well. I am very serious about this. I am very serious about this. Do not text him, period. Period. Please understand that. And Brian, you know me. You know me. And you know that I mean what I'm saying to you.
So because that was the ex-wife, we all assumed that he was not talking about the lawsuit with Jaguar Wright, but apparently it must have been one with his ex-wife. But I found it really interesting that when it came to the Jaguar Wright case, it was very easily accessible and plenty of people had that lawsuit. But when it came to this, it was so vague that it made me want to go find it. And you know I found it. All right. So let's pull up this lawsuit of Brian McKnight versus Julie. All right. So here we go. Let's get into it. I have some redactions because apparently they fighting hard to keep it, away. But hey. So this is the nature of the action. The defamation, slander, libel, per qua, and torturous interference with business contract action arises from the false statements that were made about Mr. Brian McKnight, hereinafter Mr. McKnight, by Miss Julie McKnight, hereinafter Miss McKnight, in her book Mama Bear, Beautifully Blended, followed by the numerous interviews she has participated in regarding the book's content and an effort to promote the book. Such interviews have been shared online through various websites. While Miss McKnight never directly identified Mr. McKnight by name in her book and only referred to him as, quote, my children's father, it is clear to third parties that Miss McKnight's allegations were about Mr. McKnight. In the book, Miss McKnight claims that she was emotionally abused and harassed by Mr. McKnight. Additionally, Miss McKnight claims that Mr. McKnight neglected the well-being of their minor children and that he was the sole reason as to why neither she nor their children were ever fully successful in the music industry. I want to point out, nor there is one word right there, okay? Miss McKnight's allegation and references to Mr. McKnight are false and were created as a hoax to generate a positive publicity for herself and her career. Miss McKnight's false allegations and insinuations that Mr. McKnight was emotionally abusive during their marriage and neglected their children is defamatory per se, as Miss McKnight falsely implied that Mr. McKnight was guilty of crimes involving moral turpitude. That right there, what are we, huh? But I'm going to go on. Crimes of moral turpitude, because she insinuating, according to him, that he was emotionally abusive during their marriage and neglected their children. And in their mind, that is defamatory per se, because there was an implication of a crime involving moral. I don't know the crime for emotional neglect, but it should be a whole lot of people locked up if it is. Okay. Or even emotional abuse. It should be a whole lot of people locked up if it is. But let me go on. Additionally, Miss McKnight's false allegations and insinuations have prejudiced Mr. McKnight in his career as a singer and songwriter, along with having immensely damaged his reputation as a public figure. So according to this, her comments have prejudiced his career as a singer and songwriter and damaged his reputation as a public figure. Her comments. As a singer, songwriter, and now author, Miss McKnight knew or should have known that these false allegations and insinuations would have a negative impact on Mr. McKnight and his career. Mr. McKnight brings this defamation action to restore his reputation. Additionally, Mr. McKnight seeks to establish Miss McKnight's legal liability for the false allegations and insinuations. For the damage he has endured, Mr. McKnight seeks compensatory damages for the reputation harm and punitive damages for Miss McKnight's willful and malicious intentions she demonstrated when publishing these false allegations and insinuations. Please hit the like button, please. Let's go on. So they go over all the parties. All right. They say it was within a book, Mama Bear, Beautifully Blended. Then they go over jurisdiction and venue. And let's go over the statement of facts. Mr. McKnight's career began when he signed his first record deal with Wing Records and debuted his first album, Brian McKnight, in 1992. Throughout the decades, Mr. McKnight has recorded 17 studio albums, appeared in approximately 8 films, and numerous television shows. Mr. McKnight has numerous hit songs to include, but are not limited to, Love Is, One Last Cry, You Should Be Mine, and Back at One. You're like a dream come true. to just wanna be with you. You do got some jams, Brian McKnight. You got some jams. I can't take that from you. Mr. McKnight's work has been nominated numerous times throughout the decades and has landed him on the NAACP Image Awards for Outstanding Male Artist after releasing Back at One, and the Soul Train Music Awards for Best R&B Male Album for the album Anytime. Mr. McKnight was married to Miss McKnight for 13 years from 1990 to 2003. During their marriage, 2 children were born: Brian McKnight Jr., hereinafter Brian, and Nico McKnight, hereinafter Nico. On or about January 24, 2025, Miss McKnight released her book, Mama Bear Beautifully Blended. In the first chapter, Welcome, Miss McKnight immediately sets the tone of how difficult it was for her to write this book due to the, quote, painful moments she had to relive. Okay. In doing so, Miss McKnight immediately insinuated to the readers that the following chapters would entail difficult and hurtful moments that she had to endure throughout her life as a result of Mr. McKnight's actions. So you guys are challenging what she alleges is her experience in a marriage that none of us were in. None of us were in that house. None of us knows what happened. She is saying what her experience is, that she had a lot of painful moments, as we have all had painful moments in our life. And in your interpretation, are insinuating that throughout the book, all the pain or these painful moments are the result of Mr. McKnight's actions. But let's go on. It became evident at the beginning of the following chapter, Upside Down, that Miss McKnight would discuss the time period of her life that she was married to Mr. McKnight, a man I'd marry and divorce, quote, and the years that followed as they co-parented Brian and Nico. So trying to lay the foundation that she was talking about him without saying his name. After Miss McKnight provided a brief synopsis of her and Mr. McKnight's relationship in college, Miss McKnight discussed the events around discovering that she was pregnant with their first child, Brian, and in making the decision to have him. Miss McKnight wrote about Mr. McKnight's reaction after being informed that Miss McKnight was pregnant at her decision to have the baby. And her decision to have the baby. In the following chapter, Changes, Miss McKnight made false statements that continued this false portrayal. After asking what he meant, I realized that he was speaking of abortion. I told him I'd gone for my initial appointment and that I hadn't had any procedures done. As the first few pages of Changes continue, Miss McKnight made further false statements that added to have negative portrayals of Mr. McKnight. Miss McKnight made false statements that portrayed Mr. McKnight as an unemployed man who had no means to support not only himself but a baby. Quote, was not working, nor was he in school. He was coming to Los Angeles to pursue a career in music, which he was uncertain of. End quote. Miss McKnight knowingly made these false statements, as in June of the same year, Mr. McKnight was in the process of signing a record deal. So she basically said, you ain't had no money, and your response is she lied because you was in the process of signing a record deal. Am I reading that correctly? Thank you, Shirley, for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Y'all hit this like button. This complaint is stressing me out. I don't know. You basically said what I'm reading of this, and anybody, y'all could correct me if I'm wrong. But how I am reading this is you're saying that you were in the process of a record deal. You didn't say you signed. They gave you money up front. And even if you did, what does that have to do with the years before, the months before that moment? I don't know. Let's go on. Okay, let's go on. Miss McKnight demeaned Mr. McKnight's true opportunities and success at that time in order to appear more self-sufficient and to portray Mr. McKnight as unsupportive. Quote, I was the working one. I had already secured insurance for myself and the baby, end quote. As the chapters continue, Miss McKnight contradicted herself when she falsely stated, quote, in this conversation, he informed my parents that he not only wanted to be in the baby's life, he also wanted to marry me. Again, there were tears and words filled with how much he loved me, end quote. Followed by, quote, he definitely wasn't the same man who held my hand in the back of my parents' car as we discussed our future, end quote. Prior to making these statements, Miss McKnight claimed that Mr. McKnight wanted her to have an abortion and portrayed him as an individual wanting nothing to do with the baby. Yet, here she states that Mr. McKnight was in love with her and the idea of having their baby. In closing out the chapter, Miss McKnight discussed the birth of Brian. Miss McKnight falsely stated that Mr. McKnight was present during the birth of Brian. Miss McKnight falsely stated that Mr. McKnight was present during the birth of Brian, when in reality, Mr. McKnight was not present, meaning Mr. McKnight did not witness Miss McKnight, quote, lying on a bed in the hallway, end quote, that he did not, quote, tell them that I was a high-risk patient and that moving me would put my song, I guess that's supposed to be my son, and myself in danger, end quote. Nor did he, quote, ran for a nurse and asked for help. So apparently, according to them in this book, she gives, when she's about to have a baby and some alleged events that occurred before they had a baby. And he said, well, that couldn't have happened because he wasn't even there for the birth of his child. Is that a flex? I don't know. In the next chapter, Welcome to Hollywood, Miss McKnight discussed how she endured Mr. McKnight interfering with her career in the music industry and the emotional abuse he subjected her to. Miss McKnight stated that Mr. McKnight would demean her work. At that moment, I started to second guess everything about my music, my singing, my songwriting, end quote, and her self-esteem through emotional abuse, quote, from that point on, him chipping away at my self-esteem, although subtle, would grow more evident and damaging, end quote. Further, Miss McKnight stated that Mr. McKnight was the reason for the delay in her career, stating, quote, he went on to ask if I would just give him the time to get his career off the ground before I started to work on mine, end quote. Miss McKnight knew or should have known that this statement was false and that it was her decision not to fully pursue her career at the time. Additionally, Miss McKnight discussed her part in Mr. McKnight's career. Miss McKnight made the false statement that she handled, quote, media scrutiny, navigating social media events, or supporting him through career highs and lows, end quote. Miss McKnight held no part in Mr. McKnight's career, nor being a strategist for Mr. McKnight. So she was the wife for years and she had no parts in his career. Miss McKnight also discussed Nico's birth in this chapter. Again, Miss McKnight provided false statements regarding Mr. McKnight's actions during delivery, false as Mr. McKnight was not present for Nico's birth. So you wasn't present for neither one of these kids, is what you alleging in this lawsuit. Due to Mr. McKnight's not being present, he could not have participated in the decision regarding Miss McKnight's fallopian tubes being burned. Further, Miss McKnight could not have heard, quote, the sounds of giddy nurses swooning over my husband, end quote, or witnessed Mr. McKnight, quote, held our son and swooned over how beautiful he was, end quote. Let's go on. In the chapter beginnings, Miss McKnight alluded that Mr. McKnight was not only a demeaning and abusive husband, but a neglectful father, as she withheld listing him a positive male influence for Brian and Nico. Quote, yes, my sons were blessed to have many positive male influences in their lives. Between my father, their uncles, and my cousins, my sons were not lacking in male role models, end quote. So they're saying she inferred that he was a neglectful father because she didn't list him as a positive male influence in her kid's life. So my question is, a lot of this stuff you're saying, how are you going to be able to prove this as being true or false? An opinion means it's not capable of truth or false. She is saying what her opinion is. In her opinion, these other men were great role models, and they put in, I guess they stepped up and they stepped in and stepped up when it came to her kids, and they didn't go without male figures because they were around. That is her opinion, that they were a great influence. You may not like her opinion. You may say that's not your rendition or interpretation of the story of how all of this stuff went. But to say I'm going to sue her for her opinion is interesting. But anyway, let's move on. Let's see what else they got, cuz we just in the beginning. Maybe it's more to it that she said in the book, cuz I haven't read the book. Further, Miss McKnight made the false statement that Mr. McKnight had committed a criminal act when she alleged that he had broken into her home, gone through her belongings, and left photographs of the man she had been dating when she made the statement. Quote, my computer screen was open to messages that I'd received from the man I was dating, and someone had taped pictures of him to the screen. The pictures had been scratched and some torn. Looking around the room, I saw there were more pictures scattered across the bed, as well as taped to my bathroom mirror. My closet was torn apart. I felt violated. I knew exactly who had done this. It was my children's father. So he's saying she accused him of committing a crime. He didn't do it. This wasn't him. This was somebody else if this happened. Immediately after Miss McKnight made these false accusations, Miss McKnight led the reader to believe that Mr. McKnight had acted in similar ways prior to, as she insinuated that Mr. McKnight had stalked her. How many times had he been in my home? How often was he parked somewhere watching me? Had he come to my campus? To the point her friends had to protect my home. To further her narrative that Mr. McKnight had stalked and harassed her, Miss McKnight stated Miss McKnight stated in Could You Be the One, quote, while I arrived in my house on my welcome mat, there was an envelope. The writing on the front said, quote, for you. I recognized the handwriting and I could tell that there was a CD inside. It was from my children's father. My heart began to beat. Glancing over my shoulder, I'd almost expected to see him standing behind me. I even hesitated to go into my house for fear that he'd be inside. Miss McKnight knew upon writing the above statement that Mr. McKnight had not been to her home that day nor left a CD to listen to. Miss McKnight continued her defamatory and false accusations throughout her book and into another chapter, Khaki Lack. In the chapter Khaki Lack, Miss McKnight began with false statements to lead the reader to believe that Mr. McKnight had not and has not fulfilled orders set by the court in regard to their divorce. Quote, a divorce that would take years to finalize, still with court orders unmet to this day, end quote. Miss McKnight knew or should have known that Mr. McKnight had fulfilled the orders of the court in reference to their divorce at the time she made the statements. Miss McKnight, now she can prove whether that's true or false. She can just pull whatever orders out, whether it's child support, all of that stuff is a part of your divorce decrees. It is have attachments related to your children. If you use friend of the court or whatever they call them in other states, all of that stuff is attached. So she can prove whether that's true or false by the documents, but I don't know. Miss McKnight falsely alleged that Mr. McKnight had also interfered with Brian and Nico's success in the music industry. Quote, what I didn't expect was that their talent would intimate him as much as mine had. There was no putting their CDs in the hands of the influential people within the company that he has even signed to and speaking on their behalf. Mr. McKnight has numerous attempts on Brian and Nico's behalf to help their career in the music industry. So Mr. McKnight said he did try to help his sons, and that Miss McKnight was not being honest when she said that he did not. These acts include, but are not limited to, Mr. McKnight having secured a recording contract for Brian that was ultimately dropped due to Brian's failure to fulfill his portion of the contract. So that's something that can be shown, that can be proven if that happened. Additionally, Miss McKnight stated to the reader that Mr. McKnight further interfered with Brian and Nico's success in the music industry when, after Brian and Nico had been offered a contract, Mr. McKnight requested that they allow him to get a better deal for them. Miss McKnight furthered her false narrative when she made the statement that nothing ever came of the offer he was supposed to present to the boys. To further her attempt to damage Mr. McKnight's reputation, Miss McKnight made false statements intentionally chose specific times Brian and Nico spent with Mr. McKnight in order to portray Mr. McKnight as a neglectful father. Miss McKnight insinuated that Mr. McKnight knowingly made negligent choices in regard to Brian and Nico and their well-being during their minor years by mixing in vague information regarding some of the times Brian and Nico spent with Mr. McKnight. Miss McKnight stated that she had endured disturbing images of unsupervised parties. Music videos which featured porn stars were recorded at the house with her minor children, and even referred to a song that was released in an advertising campaign for an adult entertainment site. Miss McKnight intentionally chose this specific time when Mr. McKnight had participated in the production of a song for an advertisement for an adult entertainment website to further her narrative that Mr. McKnight was negligent to Brian and Nico. Miss McKnight falsely stated that the children, as she referenced them, were still minors when in reality they were adults. Quote, "My sons at the time were still minors, and what I was hearing concerned me. Finally, watching the videos confirmed my concerns. My sons and their friends were the featured artists on this particular song. All the extras were stars from the adult film industry." They say firm industry, but it's a lot of little typos. I don't know if it's typos in the book or if it's typos in the pleading. But anyway, in a following chapter called Negotiations, Miss McKnight furthered her false narrative that she held a major role in Mr. McKnight's career, insinuating to the reader that without her, Mr. McKnight might not have been successful at the top of his career. I would read through every contract with a fine-tooth comb. Loopholes that would have been detrimental to him were caught and revised. Miss McKnight continued the false narrative that Mr. McKnight has not complied with court orders when she stated, quote, "The conditions that were established were set in place to ensure that our children and their children would be secure. I would never have imagined that the majority of these terms to this day have not been met," end quote. Or this says not been met. I don't know. Again, Miss McKnight knew this statement was false at the time she wrote it. Miss McKnight made further statements to further push her false narrative that Mr. McKnight was not supportive of Brian and Nico's desires to have a career in the music industry. Quote, "The deal that he said wasn't as good as the one he could get for them, and that he would only need a couple months to pull it together. The deal that he promised never came. Instead, he continued to tell them that they weren't ready or just keep working on it. I watched my sons receive the same pat on the back that I gotten years before." Mr. McKnight was never made aware of such deal as Miss McKnight stated. Further, as a result of not being aware of the deal, none of the events or statements by Mr. McKnight could have occurred as Miss McKnight claims they did. These statements were twisted to insinuate to the reader that once again, Mr. McKnight had interfered with not only her success in the music industry, but also their children's. In order to further her false narrative that Mr. McKnight was a negligent father, Miss McKnight made additional false statements regarding his part in Brian and Nico's lives. The statements included, but are not limited to, quote, "Even still, they weren't making enough income to sustain a separate household, but they were working towards their dreams," end quote. They were beginning to feel that they were merely pawns in their father's show, end quote. And especially while they were underage. I knew that they were a huge asset to their father's show and the image he was trying to bring to the younger audience. Miss McKnight stated in various audio and video interviews that were published to various internet sites that Mr. McKnight was an abusive and demeaning husband, a neglectful father, and intentionally and maliciously interfered with her and the children's music industry success. So apparently in promoting this book, Miss McKnight went on other platforms. And of course, when you go on platforms and you talk about a book, they presumably read the book and they probably asked specific questions related to what was in the book. On or about December 15, 2024, so about 10 months ago, Miss McKnight participated in an interview with Amanda Lamb for her podcast, Ageless, Opening Doors with Amanda Lamb, to promote her book. During the interview, Miss McKnight insinuated that Mr. McKnight did not support her career when she made the statement, quote, "Well, no, only star in this house," end quote. On around January 23rd, 2025, Miss McKnight sat down with Karen Clark on Foxy 107.5 for an interview regarding her book in an effort to promote it. During the interview, Miss McKnight claimed the statements that were made in the book were truthful. Quote, "I welcome any form of pushback because I'm telling the truth and I don't worry about it," end quote. And that she intentionally chose the things she wrote about in the book. There are so many things that were not talked about. And he knows that too. So you're welcome, Brian, end quote. Miss McKnight continued in the interview to allege that Mr. McKnight would be abusive to Brian and Nico, which required her to protect them from Mr. McKnight. Quote, "Which I've had to do with them since we were asked to leave our house at 2 and 3 years old and 4. And from that moment, I tried to start building their skin, layering on protection, on safety for them, making their spaces safe," end quote. Further, Miss McKnight stated that she felt the need to protect the children Mr. McKnight had with her other women from the abuse Mr. McKnight has subjected Brian and Nico to. So he got other kids too. When their daughters came into our lives, the same for them, the same for their moms and my 2 sisters' moms and I. We've tried to do our best with keeping a shield around all our babies and now our grandbabies as well. So where are these other kids at? Have they come to the front with any type of information? Miss McKnight made the false statement during the interview that Mr. McKnight had made a prior claim that Miss McKnight trapped him by telling him that she was going to have an abortion. One story that came, and I do talk about it in the book, that came where he made, the comments, this one, he made the comments that I, apparently trapped him and told him that I was going to have an abortion and that he found out, way later that I didn't, end quote. Additionally, Miss McKnight further stated that this statement from Mr. McKnight, along with others, are still damaging to Brian. So my older son is having to hear this so that he's 35 now. He was 32 at the time. Still now, I'm having to call my children to put little fires out that have been created. And this was just a lie, end quote. And as the interview continued, Miss McKnight made false statements that Mr. McKnight was negative to her during the time Nico was recovering from cancer, when in reality, it was Miss McKnight who was negative and unallowable of Mr. McKnight's presence. Quote, "I did receive a out of the blue text from him about a year ago when our son Nico was, going through his healing process with his cancer. So I did get a very, very negative text from him during that process. And you asked that because then I can address, he made a comment where he hasn't contacted our son because I left a very, he didn't say harsh, very aggressive voicemail. And in a way, I will say that is true because once the text was received, I made it very, very, very clear that this type of negativity is not going to be allowed in this space. So that must be the voicemail that he played at the end of his celebratory post for this alleged $8 million verdict that's in. Okay, $8.8 million. Miss McKnight falsely alluded that it was Mr. McKnight's choice that he was not involved at the time, but failed to elaborate on the true scope of the conversation and only elaborated on the parts that portrayed Mr. McKnight negatively. And yeah, he was told that now you're more than welcome to be a part of this in a positive way. But once the text was sent, it was, oh, no, thank you. So basically, she's saying she was trying to protect her kid that was going through treatment. That's what I gather from it. You know, y'all can tell me if you interpret it differently. Further, Miss McKnight falsely alluded that it was Mr. McKnight's fault that their children are not in contact with him as he is so damaging to their mental health. But honestly, at this point, it's just been so damaging with even when we've all just stepped away from it, because any response, any type of tidbit will fuel the fire for the attention that he apparently needs, and he's got to get it from us, end quote. Miss McKnight then informed Karen Clark and those listening that Mr. McKnight had replaced them with another model and that he moved on from them, insinuating that Mr. McKnight is an insensitive individual who will just replace people, whether it be his own children or not, when he no longer needed them. I hope she kept some of these online video clips and comments and posts and stuff, because I'm going to give my opinion. The stuff that was coming out about the current family, and I think it was trying to change the name to the another Brian McKnight Jr. and all that stuff. Again, I don't know these people, so this is just what I'm getting here on the internet. I think a lot of people came to that conclusion. I don't think that was something that was pulled up out of the air. That was some of the comments that it just felt that that's what was happening when you would talk online. That's just my opinion, though, Brian, based on what you put online. Okay, because I don't know you. I don't know nothing about you. But make sure y'all hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, okay? All right. On or around April 5th, 2025, Miss McKnight participated in an interview with Les Holmes on his podcast, Les Holmes Series of Music, to promote her book. During the interview, Miss McKnight falsely stated that Mr. McKnight was abusive in their marriage. Retrace, the feeling from a marriage that at times were extremely painful, stressful, emotionally, mentally abusive, all of the above, that every time I would, I kept journals forever for years and years and years. So if she has these journals that could support what she's saying, those journals will probably be admissible, because it goes to her mental state at the time. You know how in the Diddy case, how it was, I think it was Jane, they allowed her little journals after the fact that she started keeping after the lawsuit. They started allowing those, they allowed some passages, I think, in over the objection of the defense. And the reasoning is because it's your emotional, your state of mind at that time. So it's not considered hearsay and not necessarily self-serving, especially if it's contemporaneous to the situation at hand. So that'd be interesting if she still has those journals. Miss McKnight furthered her narrative that the marriage was such an abusive and traumatic time when she stated, "Stop being a punk about this. You lived through it. You survived this. Now you're worried about experiencing it again," end quote. When Miss McKnight made this statement, she placed herself in a category of individuals who have, quote, survived traumatic and abusive relationships, when she knew or should have known that this narrative was false. Additionally, during the interview, Miss McKnight insinuated that Mr. McKnight has spread false statements and are only given partial amounts of information regarding their marriage and their children, and due to this, it required her to write her a book in order for the whole story to be told. Quote, "So many narratives, thank you social media and the net, that were untrue. I didn't want them at any point to come about and say This is what my life was because this is who I am from. No, it wasn't so much that we need to clear the air, but it needed to be a complete story told, end quote. On or about April 30th, looks like Tasha K has entered the chat. Miss McKnight participated in an interview to promote Mama Bear Beautifully Blended. The interview was with Tasha K for her podcast, Unwind with Tasha K. Almost immediately, Miss McKnight makes the false statement that Mr. McKnight was the reason behind her career being on hold for so long. Quote, so I just love singing and I let it. I just dropped it at the request of my then husband to fall back so he could, end quote. As the interview continued, Miss McKnight further discussed in a negative and derogatory context the other children that Mr. McKnight had with other women in an effort to portray him in a negative light. So were they married when these kids came out, or this is what he had before they got together? Were these like kids he already had? Somebody go look that up for me. I need some information on the other kids. In an effort to bring positive attention to herself, Miss McKnight quickly made the statement that, quote, even then my philosophy was if there are babies, people step out, people are tempted, they do what they do, they make their mistakes, and everything happens. That's kind of what seems like she's inferring. And if as a result of that, there's a child, that's my family. Throughout the interview, Miss McKnight continued to defame Mr. McKnight by discussing aspects of Mr. McKnight's life, factual or not, to the point of portraying him as an uncaring and narcissistic individual. Really, superstar Bella? Allegedly. He has 3 sets of kids, according to Ebby. He got the ex-wife, the girlfriend, and the current wife. Oh, interesting. You think, oh my God, there's a lot going on allegedly with Brian McKnight here. All right, let's go on. This was 24 pages. We getting through it. You see how we was able to get through this because this was interesting. Mr. McKnight's reputation and career have suffered as a result of Miss McKnight's false and defamatory statements. As a result of Miss McKnight's false statements and insinuations that Mr. McKnight was an abusive and demeaning husband, a neglectful father, and intentionally and maliciously interfered with her and their children's music industry success, Mr. McKnight's reputation and career sustained immense damage. So what I'm gathering is that you are blaming Miss McKnight for all of your career woes? Is that what you're saying right here? As a singer and songwriter herself, Miss McKnight was well aware of the negative effect that these false and defamatory statements would have on Mr. McKnight's career. Mr. McKnight has endured issues securing venues for concerts to be canceled, and petitions for tickets not to be sold through vendors. I'm assuming, again, this is just my opinion, that a lot of this had to do with back and forth, even with the son that is now deceased, different videos of how they felt about how they were treated. And the name change and the Brian Jr. and this is my Brian Jr. and this is my family right here currently. And all of those type statements kind of made people view you in a certain. So this lawsuit appears to be blaming the ex-wife, on his reputational damages and his career based on this book. This is what he is alleging. Lady 747 says she would buy a ticket for $5 just to heckle him. Joy said, claiming another man's kid but not your own is crazy. That's from Joy. That's Auntie Eva. That's what I said. I hope she kept her own receipts because this does not, I don't recall that this is how this unfolded. She came out in January. When did we start hearing stuff about Brian McKnight? She came out with the book in January, right? So when did we start hearing stuff about Brian McKnight? Was it before this book? Or everything was just in 2025? I don't know. Oh, y'all moving too fast with these comments. Y'all just as heated as I was looking at this complaint like, wait, what? Jay said, I have never heard anything that the ex-wife said. I don't care for that man because of the foolishness that he posts. That's what I didn't know anything about her book. And I wasn't about to see this man in Detroit. And I love his music. I never read that late. I don't even know what Julie looked like. If she came up and knocked on my door with a DoorDash order, I wouldn't know who that lady looked like. I don't know nothing about what she said in a book. I didn't watch not one of these interviews. I guess. So anyway, count one is defamation for statements in the book. And they say the statements were from that point on, him chipping away at my self-esteem, although subtle, will grow more evident and damaging. That's an opinion. He went on to ask if I would just give him the time to get his career off the ground before I started to work on mine. How was that? My computer screen was open to messages that I'd received from the man I was dating, and someone had taped pictures of him to the screen. The picture had been scratched and some torn. Looking around the room, I saw there were more pictures scattered across the bed as well as taped to the bathroom mirror. My closet was torn apart. I felt violated. I know exactly who had done it. It was my children's father. So he's saying he accused her of committing a crime. A little vague there. That's a little vague. Them first couple is opinions, though. What I didn't expect was that their talent would intimate him as much as mine had. There was no putting their CDs in the hands of the influential people within the company that he was even signed to the speaking on the behalf. I don't even know what that's supposed to have done. Disturbing images of unsupervised parties, music videos, which featured porn stars, were recorded at the house with my children, and even a song that was released in an advertising campaign for an adult entertainment site. My sons at the time were still minors, and what was surprising hearing concerned me. Finally, watching the videos confirmed my concerns. So watching the videos confirmed the concerns of what? So what did you have? I would have to know the context on what concerns did you have. Were you saying that you had concerns when they were younger that things were happening at the house, but you really didn't have any proof? And then when you saw this video, whether they were adults or whatever at the time, he's saying they were adults at the time. They were not minors. Is she saying when they were minors, she had concern when they were with him of maybe being exposed to stuff? And then when she saw the video and they were allegedly a part of it because there was a music video, it was acknowledged in here that it was for adult entertainment, and I guess the sons were in it. In her mind, did that confirm to her that perhaps they may have been exposed at some time? I don't know. That would need more clarification. Even still, they weren't making enough income to sustain a separate household, but they were working towards their dreams. They were beginning to feel that they were merely pawns in their father's show. Especially while they were underage, I knew that they were a huge asset to their father's show and the image he was trying to bring to the younger audience. These statements are of and concerning Mr. McKnight, as he is Miss McKnight's former husband. Additionally, Miss McKnight has repeatedly referred to Mr. McKnight in these statements as her children's father. And those who know Mr. McKnight and read the Miss McKnight book knew that person Miss McKnight was referencing. These statements were These statements by Ms. McKnight, which state that Mr. McKnight was an abusive and demeaning husband, a neglectful father, and intentionally and maliciously interfered with her and her children's music industry success, are false. So they say Mr. McKnight did not commit abuse nor demean Ms. McKnight. Ms. McKnight's allegations that Mr. McKnight abused and demeaned her are false and have not been sustained by any evidence. And what evidence do you have that it didn't happen? You see what I'm saying? That is her opinion of what she's saying her situation was. That's her opinion. That's how she felt. She felt emotionally abused. She felt neglectful. It's people that go around and do things and they don't recognize too that it may hurt them. Some people are more sensitive than other people. That's why it's called an opinion. Mr. McKnight was not a neglectful father. Ms. McKnight's allegations that inappropriate activities occurred with Brian and Nico when they were minors are false. Okay. Further, Mr. McKnight had not interfered with Ms. McKnight's, Brian, or Nico's success in the music industry. Their choices are their own, which have reflected their success. Little dig there. I see the little dig you put in there. Mr. McKnight used these false and defaming statements as a motive and means to gain positive role within the public's eyes and further her career. The substantial danger of injury to Mr. McKnight's reputation from Ms. McKnight's false statements is readily apparent. Such statements would tend to harm the reputation of another as to lower the individual's reputation within a community and or deter third parties from associating or dealing with the individual. By making such statements to third parties, Ms. McKnight has harmed Mr. McKnight's reputation. At the time of publishing the book, Ms. McKnight knew or should have known the statements were false. Ms. McKnight's false statements are defamatory per se. They insinuate that Mr. McKnight committed a crime. So they're saying all of these are per se because they all infer committing a crime. I'm not seeing that, but hey, who am I? Ain't my case. Involving moral turpitude for which Mr. McKnight, if the charges were true, could be indicted and punished. Indicted for emotional abuse, I guess. All right. As a direct and proximate result of these false and defamatory statements by Ms. McKnight, Mr. McKnight has suffered damages, including injury to his reputation, harm to his ability to carry on his profession, embarrassment, humiliation, emotional distress, and an amount to be determined at trial. Got defamation for statements in those audios and videos. So he goes into the ageless opening doors with Amanda Lamb and Unwind with Tasha K and pulls out some statements. And this is what he's saying. These interviews contain false and defamatory statements concerning Mr. McKnight, which included but was not limited to one story that came, and I do talk about it in the book, that came where he made the comments. This one. He made the comment that I, apparently trapped him and told him that I was going to have an abortion. And that he found out, way later that I didn't. So I guess if he said that, she can pull it up if he said it. I don't. So my older son is having to hear this so that he's 35 now. He was 32 at the time. Still now, I'm having to call my children to put little fires out that have been created. And this was just a lie. Okay. I did receive a out of blue text from him. Okay. We just read about that, about Nico. I don't know, that Nico thing kind of triggers me. And yeah, he was told that now you're more than welcome to be a part of this in a positive way. But once the text was sent, I was, no, thank you. But honestly, at this point, it's just been so damaging with even when we've all just stepped away from it because any response, any type of tidbit would fuel the fire for the attention that he apparently needs. And he's got to get it from us. Retrace, relive, the feelings from a marriage that at times were extremely painful, stressful, emotionally, mentally abusive, all the above, that every time I would, I kept journals forever for years and years and years. These statements are all concerning Mr. McKnight, as he is Miss McKnight's former husband. Additionally, Miss McKnight has repeatedly referred to Mr. McKnight in these statements as her children's father. And those who know Mr. McKnight and read the Miss McKnight's book knew that person Miss McKnight was referencing. These statements by Miss McKnight would state that Mr. McKnight was an abusive and demeaning husband, a neglectful father, intentionally and maliciously interfered with her and their children's music industry success were false. Mr. McKnight did not commit abuse nor demean Miss McKnight. Miss McKnight's allegation that Mr. McKnight abused and demeaned her are false and have not been sustained by any evidence. Mr. McKnight was not a neglectful father. Miss McKnight's allegation that inappropriate activities occurred with Brian and Nika when they were minors are false. Further, Miss McKnight had not interfered with Miss McKnight's, Brian, or Nico's success in the music industry. Their choices are their own, which have reflected their success. Ms. McKnight used these false and defaming statements as motive and means to gain a positive role within the public eyes and further her own career. The substantial danger of injury to Mr. McKnight's reputation for Ms. McKnight's false statements is readily apparent. Such statements would tend to harm the reputation of another, as to lower the individual's reputation within the community and or deter a third person from associating and dealing with the individual. So they're saying the statements are defamatory per se as they insinuate committing a crime. Okay, torturous interference with the business contract. Miss McKnight knew of Mr. McKnight and that he is still actively pursuing, that should be his, HIR career within the music industry. Miss McKnight intentionally wrote or caused to be published to third person the false and defamatory statements referenced herein about Mr. McKnight, resulting in interference with the potential contracts with venues, music contracts, and or ticket sales. On numerous dates, Miss McKnight has participated in interviews to promote her book, Mama Bear, Beautifully Blended, knowing it contained false and damaging information that Mr. McKnight was an abusive and demeaning husband and a neglectful father, and intentionally and maliciously interfered with her and her children's music industry success. Ms. McKnight intentionally set forth to make the statements alleged herein for her own personal satisfaction against Mr. McKnight. Ms. McKnight's actions were conducted out of personal ill will and hospitality towards Mr. McKnight. Ms. McKnight acted in actual and legal malice and without legal justification. Ms. McKnight has interfered with Mr. McKnight's business and his future contacts with venues, music contracts, and or ticket sale. Ms. McKnight's actions were malicious, willful, one evidence of conscious disregard for Ms. McKnight's rights. Mr. McKnight is entitled to punitive damages. The facts alleged above constitute torturous interference with contractual rights against Mr. McKnight. Mr. McKnight has suffered special damages, including pecuniary loss, as a proximate result of Ms. McKnight's interference with his business contracts, and that he has endured issues securing venues for concerts to be canceled, and petitions for tickets not to be sold through vendors. Mr. McKnight has sustained harm, including damages in the amount to be determined by trial. There's a jury demand, and he's asking that they award him compensatory damages of not less than $25,000. That's probably the jurisdictional amount that you have to at least have $25,000 to be in that court. And as such, additional amounts to be proven at trial. Award Mr. McKnight punitive damages to the maximum extent permitted by the laws of the state, but not less than $25,000. Award Mr. McKnight all of his expenses and costs, including attorney fees, and grant such other and further relief as the court deems appropriate. This was filed May 8th of 2025. So this is the lawsuit that was filed against Julie. No, he got a lawyer, Andre. He has a lawyer. Okay, and then according to the docket, because we just went through the docket, okay? According to the docket, Julie was served, according to the docket, on July 14th, 2025. And according to the docket, so he filed it in May. 2 months later, it looks like she was served July 14th, 2025. And it was served via hold on a second. Make sure. I think it was like FedEx. think it was served FedEx, and they show like her initials at the bottom of the FedEx. Let's see. Excuse me, y'all. I'm just sniffing all up in here. All up in the mic. Let me see the proof of service. Oh no, this is me. So this is my stuff. Let me take this off here. Let me see. Do I got her proof of service? Hold on. Oh, here it go. Because I had to redact it. Yeah, it was FedEx. So it was overnighted. And yeah. That's supposed to be her signature at the bottom, that it was overnighted. All right. So now what he did was she did not respond, is what it looks like. There was no response. And so, because there was no response, he filed a default. So this is the default. That was entry of default. And that was defaulted on July 17th. It appearing to the undersigned assistant clerk of court from the request of the attorney for plaintiff's attorney and the file that defendant Julie McKnight has been served the complaint and summons on May 9th, 2025, and failed to plead to the complaint, is under the disability and is subject to judgment by default as provided in the rules. So that's the default. So after a default is signed by the clerk of the court, that's just a document, as you see, that is usually some form. Usually you don't even got to type it out. It's like a form, already pre-printed form, and you ask for a default because the other party has been served and they have not responded, either answering it or a motion to dismiss or otherwise plead coming into this case. And so in response, after that, you file a motion for a judgment of entry of default. So their motion was filed in order to try to enter in the default judgment. Let me see. Hold up. Okay, let me pull this up. So this was the motion for default that was filed. I thought they had been to court. They were rambling. She got an attorney. They was going back and forth, and the jury was impaneled. That's what I was thinking, but apparently not. So motion for default judgment. Now comes the plaintiff, Brian McKnight, bond through counsel, and moves for court under the rules as follows. A summons together with a copy of the complaint was served upon the defendant, Julie McKnight, by FedEx, signature required on May 9th. Pursuant to the rules, service was deemed to be completed on the defendant on May 9th. Defendant has totally failed or refused to answer or otherwise defend. Defendant has not filed an entry of appearance. That on the 17th day of July 2025, the clerk of this court, after reviewing the entry of default and the supporting affidavit of service, docketed entry of default judgment against the defendant. Pursuant to Rule 55 of the rules, plaintiff is entitled to default judgment for the defendant's failure to answer or otherwise defend. Wherefore, a premise is considered, plaintiff moves the court to enter a default judgment against the defendant as the court may deem necessary and appropriate. So that is the motion, which is just a request for default. Now, what she can do, I'm not giving no legal advice of no kind. Okay, I don't know this lady. But typically in these type of situations, when somebody orders a default, because sometimes it happens to big companies, it just gets overlooked. you sue an insurance company or something and they don't respond and it's inadvertent, they'll do a motion to set aside the default. Is typically what happens. So the default is entered. Now they're trying to do a motion for entry of a judgment so they can actually get an amount. I looked on the docket and I ain't see no amount. There's on the docket that I looked at, there was no amount that was on there. Now, there were affidavits filed last month. That's why I thought it was interesting. Why was it brought up now? Because all of this stuff I'm telling you has been going on from May when he filed it to last month. I think that's the last. There was some type of notice from the court the first week of October. But other than that, it really wasn't, unless they just didn't post whatever the court, if the court made a decision, they ain't posted. So he said he just got word on the 16th, but if they got word, it's not on the docket yet, if that actually happened. So he had to do an affidavit to try to, you have to support. You can't just say, I lost $8 million, 8.8, but you haven't shown the 8.8. They don't allow that in a default judgment. You literally have to go before the court, and it's a hearing, and you have to say, listen, if it's a medical malpractice, my client lost a limb. Obviously, an arm is important. Now they can't do a whole lot of things in life. They can't hardly do household chores. They're not going to be able to, they're going to have to relearn how to live their whole life. They're going to have all these medical bills, and you can kind of predict based on what has occurred the future, or they have what's called like life expectancy. That's actually an expert who can say, you were a person that was a mechanic. Now you lost your arm. You was making $100,000 a year. Now you cannot make that $100,000 a year because you lost your arm because of the malpractice of this hospital. And so you come up with these numbers and you have to justify the numbers. You can't just throw in, I want 30 million just because. Typically, you have to justify it somehow with an affidavit. So he has put in the affidavit, and this is what he is alleging. Whoever this is, Melinda said that I'm an authorized agent through the management company in Singapore for Brian McKnight. She got her full name. She says she's 18. She makes this affidavit in her capacity as an authorized agent for Brian McKnight, and the information provided relates to deals and opportunities that have fallen through as a result of the defamatory statements made against him. Mr. McKnight was in the process of securing a deal with a music television program in China that fell through as a result of the false and defaming statements. The basic fees were set at $78,000 per episode for a total of 13 episodes, equaling $1,014,000. So that's what he's alleging he lost because of her book. In addition, the counterparty had agreed to provide $50,000 per event as compensation for up to 8 event concerts that must be canceled due to commitments in China. Evidence of at least 6 cancellations can be substantiated and consisted of 4 events in Australia with artwork provided and 2 events in Indonesia. A further cancellation was expected for a wedding in Montreal on August 2nd, 2025, notwithstanding possible travel arrangements. This would bring the total proven cancellations to 7, with efforts ongoing to prove 8. If all 8 cancellations were substantiated, this will equal $400,000 in additional compensation, bringing the total contractual fees to $1,414,000 net of tax and bank charges. A further $100,000 flight buyout was requested to enable independent travel arrangements. Confirmation was pending, with expectation of a possible counteroffer. The current proposed payment schedule was structured across 6 to 7 installments. A formal request was made to reduce this to 3 or 4 equal installments. A further request was made that the cancellation fee portion and flight contribution be paid up front. Mr. McKnight was to receive accommodations that included a high floor, non-smoking, presidential style suite with a large living area capable of hosting at least 6 persons for sit down meals and meetings. Ideally, this would have been a 3-bedroom suite and an adjoining rooms and a pre-approved 5-star international brand hotel. Mr. McKnight's flight coverage was pending a confirmation of $100,000. Further, Mr. McKnight was to receive security at all times in public spaces, backstage, airport transfers, and other outings. Additionally, his airport travel and departure were to include VVIP services with airside meet and greets, fast track through immigration, and golf buggy transport for the touring party. Ground transport was to include what does this have to do with it if it's canceled? You wasn't gonna get this in your pocket. This was just accommodating if you were there. I don't know. All meals were going to be covered, including room service, laundry and dry cleaning. Costs were to be included. Room, phone calls, and Wi-Fi were going to be fully provided. An English-speaking artist liaison was arranged for the duration of the stay. Insurance coverage was to be provided to include public liability, general travel, health, and all other necessary insurance for Mr. McKnight and the full touring party during the China engagement. Further, it was agreed that technical, hospitality, and dressing room riders would be fulfilled. I make this affidavit voluntarily for lawful purposes and understand that it may be used in legal administration proceedings. So that is the first that he's saying he lost. That's the first affidavit. Dina said in 2001, my agency was shooting a Christmas commercial and they had to change it because he said he's a platinum selling artist and he doesn't carry his own Christmas tree. All right, let's see. There was another affidavit in support of his loss. No, that's what I just did. Hold on 1 second, y'all. I know it was 2 on here. Hold up. All right. I think I found it. Y'all hit the like button, please. Thank you. This is another affidavit from Patrick. I guess Patrick is this is so hard to read. Lord have mercy on me. Let's blow this up. Patrick is an authorized agent of the talent agency who represents Mr. Bryan. He gives his full name. He's 18. He makes it in connection with the defamatory statements. As a direct result of defamatory statements, there are multiple major cities in the United States that have become extremely difficult to book or secure offers within the standard rate for Mr. Bryan McKnight. These cities include, but are not limited to, Detroit, we first on the list. Washington, D.C., where you at, D.C.? Baltimore, where you at in the chat? Memphis, Atlanta, where y'all at? Charlotte, Raleigh, and Chicago. They are not booking Mr. McKnight. The foregoing cancellations and refusals to book represent a substantial financial loss. Each of these bookings will reasonably command a minimum of $50,000 per show. Considering the anticipated career horizon of approximately 10 more years until retirement, the losses amount to approximately $450,000 per year, or several millions of dollars in total projected losses. These losses have arisen specifically following the release of the defamatory book. which has directly impacted reputation, marketability, and performance opportunities across these major U.S. markets. I make this affidavit voluntarily, blah, blah, to blah, blah, to blah, blah, blah. All right, so that is where we are. And let's look at the docket so y'all know I'm not making this up, okay? That I don't see no $8 million. But hey, maybe it's on another lawsuit or something, or maybe something happened. So this is the actual docket. And I went over May 8th, it was filed. Okay. And July 16th, there was an affidavit. July 17th, there was an entry of default. August 5th, there was summons. August 5th, a motion for the default. There was a notice of hearing filed for September. There were affidavits September 12th, and there's a case management notice for October 6th at 11:01. Now there was a hearing that took place at 2:30 in front of Judicial Officer Don McDonald Layton, and that was for the motion for default judgment. So that was September 16th. It was for 30 minutes. Plaintiff's motion for default judgment was granted, but the details of the default judgment were under advisement. TCA office to email finalized order to parties. Plaintiff and plaintiff's attorneys notice via WebEx. So if they came up with $8.8 million, it was not on the docket yet. Again, a month ago, September 16th, because he did this video. Remember, October 16th, a month later, the judge took it under advisement on so the motion was granted that a default was going to be entered. Some people get defaults and they get nominal amounts. So I don't know if the court wanted to go through everything and figure out what it was worth based on these affidavits that were filed the day of the hearing. Maybe, let me see, when was that? So the day of the hearing was the 16th, and they filed the affidavits on the 12th. So maybe they wanted to go through it, but they have not filed it to the docket yet. So unless he's saying he got an email that the judge is going to give him $9 million or 8.8 million, whatever, it's all like 100 million if you ain't got it. But nonetheless, if that was the judgment, then they're privy to it, and it's not on the docket if it is, because the last notation was that there were a hearing on September 16th. The motion for default judgment was granted, but it was taken under advisement, it appears, as to what amounts. She should have fought this. I'm just saying. The details of the default judgment were under advisement. So I'm going to assume that Brian McKnight would not go on here and just say it was $8.8 million and pull it out his hat. Perhaps he got some email that went to the attorneys and they told him that was the amount that they were going to allow him to have. But I'll definitely be looking for the judgment. All right. Because it seems like they would put it on the docket. But Auntie Eva said, thank you. Thank y'all so much. I know this was a long situation here, but when you just come out talking about you got $8.8 million, I was like, he said the verdict is in. So when he said the verdict was in, I thought he went to somebody's trial, and this is what happened. And apparently it was default. It was a default that was entered. They went to court. There was a default judgment that the court did grant. But the court took it under advisement on the details of the granting of that judgment. So she got this against her because she failed to appear or otherwise participate in this hearing and in this lawsuit at all. Pretty much. So you out here making it seem like you just out here putting it on people. That's how I took it. I was like, oh, he done went to trial. And they was like, no. It's a default. Okay, so let me see what Brian McKnight Jr. had to say, because I ain't even listened to what he said.
I've tried, man. I've tried really, really hard. To not catch myself. To let it go. To be the bigger person. To be mature. To be something. But what's going on with my dad right now, man? If y'all aren't seeing what's happening, if y'all aren't seeing the fact that this is just a very hurt and a very emotionally unavailable and not intelligent person, the person that is still have not been able to handle the death of his own mother, the things that we're seeing him go through right now, to decide to make certain posts on my late brother's birthday. Say what you want, dog. But the gloves are off for me, just to keep it real. And there's, I've tried, man. And the thing about it is just like, I get it, man. You know, our parents, they're humans too. They've gone through things too. Whatever the grievances they have against each other, whatever. My issue is, though, man, you don't want me to start talking about the things that I had to deal with in my childhood, the things that I will take to my grave, the things that my brother took to his grave that we could put out there, the things that we could say as a son, as a teenager, as a 15-year-old that my brother was when we started touring, the things that we went through together, the things that we actually saw, the things that we actually lived with and dealt with because our dad wasn't emotionally intelligent enough nor mature enough to actually be a father. You don't want, and the thing about it, and without even getting too deep, man, it's like to do it on my brother's late birthday, my baby brother's heavenly birthday, his first heavenly birthday. This is the post you decide to make. That's not petty. You don't think people are going to realize that that's ridiculous? And that it's obviously strategic? Who are you trying to hurt if it's not me and my mother and our family? Who are you trying to hurt? Who are you trying to hurt, man? Which has always been my issue. Which is why way back when that started all this, I made the post that I made because I knew that this was the only thing that would get you, man. Maybe that was my fault. I've taken accountability for it. But it's become obviously clear, and maybe not even just me, and I'm hoping to the masses that we're dealing with someone that has unchecked trauma that they're not dealing with. And to everybody else, man, you know, use us as an example for the fact that it's like, don't believe everything you see in the media either. There are multiple sides of a story. There are multiple sides of it. You know what I mean? Because you love this music, because you think you know this motherfucker, you don't. I do. My mama does. My dead bro, God rest his fucking soul, knows him. Who you gonna believe, man? Stupid. It's petty. I hate it. I hate talking about it. I hate being a part of it. It's such a shame. We watched the Jonas Brothers and their families touring the world together. Should have been us. The problem was, my dad didn't want to do it. He just wanted to fix this. And to everybody else, man, you know, use us as an example. So in closing, man, just to keep it real, this isn't the last time I'm going to talk about this, because I've realized that maybe it's time for me to start talking about this kind of stuff. Maybe it's time for me to start not airing shit out, but being vulnerable enough and open enough as someone that has lived an insane life. I'm going to start talking about these things, man. It's unfortunate that we're going through this with my father. It's unfortunate that y'all are watching my father and my mother duke it out publicly. But what I can assure you is, though, the truth will be revealed. You'll feel it. You'll know it to be true. If you actually have a heart, if you actually have a soul, and you at the very least try, you'll see the truth. So in closing, man, just to keep it real.
Okay, that's it. So that was okay. So you said who posted on IG? Was it Julie McKnight? Let me see. Is that her name on IG? I hope she gets her a lawyer to try to set this mug aside. Cause let me see. I don't even know what she looks like, so I wouldn't even know. Is this her? Okay. Oh, you saying she posted her son? Because I don't see. Hold on. She got Nico Forever, Mama Bear. Hold on. People on here just because he won don't mean it was right. People side with popularity rather than the truth. It didn't. It ain't even go nowhere. She ain't enter into the case. Um. All right. Yeah, I don't see anything like that. She said anything about this case. That's what I was looking to see. But anyway, that's the Brian McKnight saga. Now, y'all know that yeah, y'all, we got some goals here. So I'm gonna need y'all to take a moment, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the super chats or the cash app so we can meet our goals. Okay. We also know that Jaguar Wright was sued as well. And what was interesting about that case is I saw two different cases. I saw one, I think she was accused of defamation for saying that he abused his former wife. And one was filed in Nevada. And then I found one in California, just randomly looking for something else. So the one in California, why he filed two, I don't know. I have no clue why he filed two. But that case was dismissed. Plaintiff Brian McKnight moves for an order further extending the time to serve defendant Jacqueline Wright, also known as Jaguar Wright. The court ordered plaintiff to show cause while the action should not be dismissed pursuant to the Federal Rules of Civil Procedures for failure to serve defendant within the extended time allotted for service. Plaintiff filed a response. The court deems the motion appropriate for a decision without oral arguments and vacates the hearing set for October 20th. Having considered plaintiff's motion in response to the court's order to show cause, the court dismisses the action for failure to timely serve the summons and complaint. So you took an L on this one, mister. Plaintiff initiated this case on April 30th, 2025, over 5 months ago. On July 31st, 2025, more than 90 days. So he filed Jaguar. So he filed the one it looks like against Jaguar first. And then 5 days later, it looks like, or within the next few weeks is when he filed it against his wife's on this one in California. On July 31st, 2025, more than 90 days from the filing of the complaint, plaintiff had not completed service on defendant, and the court ordered plaintiff to show cause while the action should not be dismissed for lack of prosecution. In a response, plaintiff described unsuccessful attempts to service and of process and asserted that good cause existed not to dismiss the action. Plaintiff also moved for an order permitting him to serve defendant by publication. The court denied the motion for service of process by publication due to plaintiff's failure to demonstrate reasonable diligence in attempting service on defendant and for plaintiff's failure to offer independent evidentiary support for the existence of a cause of action against defendant. The court also found that plaintiff had failed to establish good cause to extend the service deadline, but on its motion extended the deadline to serve defendant by 30 days in the interest of judicial economy. Plaintiff did not file proof of service by the extended deadline of September 22nd, 2025. Instead, plaintiff sought an additional extension of the service deadline on September 21st, 2025. On September 24th, 2025, the court again ordered plaintiff to show cause while the action should not be dismissed for failure to meet the deadline to complete service. In response, plaintiff indicated that service was effectuated on September 30th, 2025, pursuant to California Code of Civil Procedures and will be completed by October 10th. Plaintiff also noted that he intends to serve defendant at her home or business as well on October 2nd or as soon as possible. October 2nd of 2025. They go over the legal standard. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure provides that if service of summons and complaint is not made open upon a defendant within 90 days of the filing the operative complaint, courts have authority to dismiss an action without prejudice after giving notice to the plaintiff. If a plaintiff shows good cause for the failure to serve the complaint within that period, the court must extend the time for accomplishing service. Plaintiff bears the burden of establishing good cause. The good cause exception to Rule 4M applies only in limited circumstances and is not satisfied by inadvertent error or ignorance of governing rules alone. A party may establish good cause by establishing at minimum excusable neglect. In addition to excusable neglect, a plaintiff may be required to show the following factors to bring the excuse to the level of good cause. A, the party to be served personally received actual notice of the lawsuit. B, the defendant would suffer no prejudice. And C, plaintiff would be severely prejudiced if the complaint was dismissed. The discussion. Plaintiff has not established good cause. Since the complaint was filed on April 30th of 2025, plaintiff had more than 4 months to serve defendant. Plaintiff has already received one 30-day extension of the service deadline on the court's own motion. Despite this extension, plaintiff did not serve defendant, let alone make effective use of the additional month to complete service. As to the factors, the Limoges factors, or however you pronounce that, plaintiff cites extensive media coverage of the lawsuit, but this does not establish that defendant has received notice. So they tried to say it was all over the place, so she knew about it. In addition, nowhere in plaintiff's motion does plaintiff address whether an extension would prejudice defendant, aside from a conclusory statement that, quote, defendant will suffer no prejudice from an extension of service. Finally, plaintiff notes that there is no statute of limitation bar to his claim. As a result, plaintiff would not be severely prejudiced if the complaint were dismissed. And for the reasons discussed above, plaintiff has not established excusable neglect, justifying his inability to complete service in time. He had to do so. All three factors weigh against an establishment of good cause. Plaintiff's motion to extend the time to serve defendant is denied. Plaintiff may complete service of defendant soon, but even if he does, service would still be untimely, and the untimely service does not excuse plaintiff's failure to establish good cause for an additional extension. First, regarding plaintiff's attempt to serve defendant by mail, a service of summons by mail is not deemed complete until the 10th day after the mailing. Therefore, service of defendant would not be complete until October 10th, 2025, more than 2 weeks after the extended deadline to complete service. So mailing is not going to help you. Second, when service is made under Section 415.40, plaintiff must file a proof of service that includes evidence satisfactory to the court, establishing actual delivery to the person to be served by a signed return receipt or other evidence. Plaintiff may not be able to establish actual delivery to defendant through satisfactory evidence. Plaintiff also indicated that he plans to attempt to serve defendant at her home and her business on October 2nd. However, given the lack of success of plaintiff's other service attempts, the court is skeptical that service will be completed by this method. Even if plaintiff does serve defendant on October 2nd, 2025, or soon thereafter, service would still be untimely. Finally, plaintiff's response to the order to show cause did not include an affidavit of service or declaration in support of the response's factual assertion. Ultimately, none of plaintiff's untimely service attempts described in his response to this order to show cause provide good cause for a second extension of the service deadline. The court also declines to exercise its discretion to retroactively extend the service deadline on its own motion. District courts have broad discretion to extend time for service under Rule 4M. Courts consider factors like a statute of limitation bar, prejudice to the defendant, actual notice of the lawsuit, and eventual service in deciding whether to grant discretionary extension. Here, several factors weigh against extension of service. As noted above, plaintiff asserts there is no statute of limitation that bars this claim, and plaintiff has failed to establish defendant has actual notice of the lawsuit. In addition, service still has not been completed, and the service attempts plaintiff described in the response to the order to show cause may be unsuccessful. Accordingly, the court declines to exercise its discretion to extend the service deadline further. Because plaintiff has not timely served the summons and complaint, the court must dismiss this action without prejudice. The court dismisses this action without prejudice for failure to timely serve process pursuant to the federal rules. So the California case has been dismissed without prejudice, meaning they can bring it back. Now, originally, I can't remember if I even went over the Jaguar case or not. The one that I had is in Vegas. So there's another one in Nevada. And again, he has not served her. And I believe he filed a motion back in August to try to serve her based on publication. So Jaguar, right. You better keep an eye out, because it sounds like he's going to try to perfect service by alternate means. And sometimes when people nobody's looking through the legal news and publication to see if they're being served or if they're being sued by anybody. So the one in California was actually dismissed for lack of service, but there was one in Nevada that's still ongoing. Again, why 2 different lawsuits were filed for the defamation? I don't know. In 2 different states? I don't know. So that is what has happened with the Jaguar, right? We'll see if some judgment comes down for $8.8 million to confirm what Brian McKnight had to say regarding the $8.8 million. But to say, I'm over here and the verdict is in, and then to do it on, I guess, your son's birthday that passed. Thank you, LaFrance, and thank you so much, Robin, for the Cash App. I appreciate your support to the channel. Thank you so much. Let's play one more time what Brian McKnight had to say. Let's say what he had to say. And then we out of here. I got food I need to eat. Okay, wait a minute.
Long journey getting to this day, October 16th, 2025. But we are here in the English countryside, about an hour and a half outside of London, and the verdict is in. We've been quiet, listening to liars continue to lie and keeping to ourselves, living and loving our life, as we said, leaving everything in God's hands and letting our lawyer do the talking. But according to the courts, trying to ruin my name and trying to bring harm to my family in a book filled with lies equals $8.8 million. And this is just the beginning, because anyone and everyone that helped promote these lies will hear from my lawyer in the days to come. No weapon formed against us shall prosper. That from my voicemail is the voice of a liar.
Do not text Miko again. Do not call Miko again. Leilani, if you are also checking these messages, that goes for you as well. I am very serious about this. I am very serious about this. Do not text him, period. Period. Please understand that. And Brian, you know me. You know me. And you know that I mean what I'm saying to you.
So apparently, to be clear, if he by chance gets $8.8 million, it is pursuant to a default judgment. It was not because she came in there, and I saw some of the comments of people like, well, because he popular, because they just believe what he says. It wasn't like this went through litigation. She responded, they went in front of a jury, and the jury felt like these were defamatory, that he was defamed and that he was damaged. This was, you got served, you didn't respond to the service. Looks like your initials were on there, that you may have accepted service, unless you come back and say that wasn't me or whatever. But it looks like you accepted service. The default was entered. You didn't try to set aside the default. And now you're talking about a judgment being entered. You have to file a motion to try to set aside the default and the default judgment. And then I'm sure, as in most places, you have to come up with good cause and meritorious defense as to why it should be set aside. Meaning you have to show good cause why you didn't respond. And also a meritorious defense is, I probably would win this case, and these are the reasons why. And that in that motion, if you have receipts, you can put in there, because I got these diary entries. I got these videos of him saying A, B, C, D, and E. I got this whatever that I told, an affidavit from my son. I got whatever, of which you can try documentation or evidence to try to support that you didn't defame him, and that even the things that you said, you stating your opinion of your marriage and how you felt in your marriage, is just that. You state that you have a defense of it being your opinion on some of those statements that were being made. I'm not even gonna say that. That's just how it goes, though. I'm just telling y'all how typically it'll go if a default judgment or default and a default judgment ends up being entered. But that is based on a person not responding. So who has been buying his music? I don't know. Well, he said nobody's trying to come to his concerts. He usually charged $50K. He's not getting booked in the big venues, the big places, which is Detroit, Atlanta, Raleigh, Charlotte, Washington, D.C., Baltimore. They not trying to book him. And he's blaming her for almost everything. So like he said, I personally believe he posted that whole $8.8 million post to deter people from being like, I'm not going to say nothing negative about him, because he might sue me. So there's that. Hot mess. Knew it was more behind it than what was being said, because I felt like I feel like he would have just posted $8.8 million and put the judgment up there. That's how I felt. Or like the jury verdict, when the jury comes back with a verdict, it's a verdict sheet, and it'll check, was she liable for defamation? And it'll check yes. If so, go to question 2. How much do you think it's worth? 8.8 million. He just seemed like the type that will post that whole verdict sheet on his platform. So that's why it made me want to go find it, even though he ain't say nothing about where it was filed or any of that. But there's that. GC said, Pam, I have seen FedEx drivers sign for my package. Oh my. Wow. So yeah, there's that, you all. You guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Thank you so much for rocking with your girl. Thank you for the cash apps and the super chats. I appreciate it. And yeah, I don't know what else to say, guys. That's it. I just wonder if the judge is going to look through everything and make the decision on if they believe any of the statements he's alleging is defamatory, and then maybe based off of that have come to a conclusion, because that means the judge doesn't know. The judge is making this determination not knowing about all of the shenanigans that were going online based off of things that he said. So that would be something she could have been able to put in the affidavit. So, man, I know she got to know somebody, girl. You know, some lawyer somewhere. Everybody know lawyer too. Try to help you out and get this, see what's going on, because there was, under pursuant to that little hearing notice, it does look like let me see what the case management says real quick. So this was the time. Hold on. I see something else now. Hold on. So this was the last thing that was filed October 6th. To the parties and or their attorneys of record, pursuant to the North Carolina Rules of Civil Procedures and the local rules for Civil Superior Court, 10th Judicial District, this notice is issued by the court administrator at the direction of the Honorable Paul C. Ridgway, Senior Resident Superior Court Judge. The court administrator's office has reviewed the file and has determined that this case requires a response from all parties and or their attorneys of record. Within 21 days of issuance of this notice, attorneys for all parties and all parties not represented by counsel shall respond to this notice as set forth in A and B. What are y'all talking about? Failure to respond as set out below or failure to comply with established timelines set forth in local rules will result in the trial date being set by the court administrator pursuant to local rules without your input, and will be considered by the court as a waiver of any conflict or problems with dates set in the trial. Oh, this is like a trial notice. All civil superior courts email a response to the court administrator. I don't know. This looks like maybe some type of document that just gets generated so that they can come up with trial dates or something. But I don't even know if it even applies if they already got a default judgment in. But anyway, I thought it was something. That was the last thing that was filed on the docket. So I wanted to make sure we went over everything on this docket so it doesn't look like I'm keeping something out. So anyway, you guys, have a great night. Okay. Talk to you guys later. Gotta go.